Hi, everyone. It's Kelly from the Hub here today with our friend Todd from Tabor. How are you there, friend?
I'm doing well.
Good. So remember, Todd talks to us about all things frugal. We've talked, last week we talked about stimulus checks and got some really good hands-on information, as we talked about it last week, for real people. Not just reading Cosmo or not just for big financiers. So using your stimulus check for real folk. And today we're going to talk about prescription drugs. This is one of those things that Todd is not going to tell you that you need to go to Canada to buy all of your medicine, although for some people that has worked. So these are ways that you can get your prescription drugs cheaper than you would sort of regularly think about. And some of you are like, I have no idea what he's going to say. And some of you are like, well, if he's got more than two ideas, then I should listen up because I only know two ways. So this is going to be fascinating. So Todd, take it away, my friend. Tell us how we can make this a little easier for our pocketbooks.
And I have to start off with this story because it just happened this week. And my son needed to go in and get a prescription. It was actually 3 prescriptions because of a thing with his back. And so we went in and he had got a notification on his phone as we were driving up to the pharmacy. And it said that the insurance would not cover one of his prescriptions. So, case in point. So I was all prepared with my card in hand.
Yep.
To be like, okay, we're going to get this thing at the best deal and everything else.
Yep.
And unbeknownst to me or my son, the pharmacist had already called in the prescription with the card that they had on hand. I don't know if it was GoodRx or anything else.
Yeah.
They used one of the cards that they had had available to them in the pharmacy and got it down to $5. So they had proactively done it. It's the first time I'd ever seen it. I'd had other people tell me that their pharmacist had done that. So it's the first time that happened to us, and that was wonderful because the 3 prescriptions together ended up being like $18.
Yeah, that pharmacist has a special place already reserved for him or her in the afterlife for being proactive. Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't a very long period of time. So I was just I was flabbergasted and very happy that they had done it.
Wow.
So beyond that, what happens is, what did they do? How did they get that discount? And I know some people might see commercials about discount cards and different things like that and think, oh yeah, that doesn't work that way.
Right. I thought that.
So years ago, I have underlying conditions where I have prescriptions that I take on a regular basis. And I knew others that were, and I'm like, well, how do you afford to do this? How do you afford to do that?
Right.
So I'm going to start with the very simple stuff and we can work our way forward.
Okay.
The most simple process is when you go in and you have insurance, they run it through your insurance and then they tell you how much it will cost you to buy that prescription.
Right.
What people don't understand is sometimes it's cheaper to go with a third-party prescription card than it is to actually use your own insurance. They think, well, if I have insurance, I'm always going to get the lowest rate. That's not actually true. So yeah, then those commercials you see for GoodRx, Single Care, WellRx, the RX Advocates, and Needy Meds. Those are some of the larger ones that are out there that are nationwide. And I forwarded this information to Kelly. So if there's a way you can put that out when we do the video, that'd be great.
Sure.
Some of the slides or whatever. But the one that's a little lesser known, and we live here in Pennsylvania, is called the Pennsylvania Prescription Assistance Program. And when you get the card in the mail, it looks like it's a scam. You look at it, it's very generic. But my sister-in-law got it. And then one of my coworkers has it as well. And I started looking up prescriptions with, let's say, GoodRx or Single Care, because they're the bigger ones, with this Pennsylvania one, the Pennsylvania Prescription Assistance, and their rates were even lower. And it's only for people that live in Pennsylvania. So, and you get the card and you can use it any pharmacy, but you can go online just like you do with GoodRx. And you can go and look at what the price should be at the actual pharmacy before you go there.
Oh,
So
that's
that's a huge
helpful.
part. Yeah, my sister-in-law would get infuriated because she had like a good RX type of card before, and she would go in and she's handicapped, so she has some other things that she has to do. She would go in and they would say, "Oh, sorry, we can't honor this or that." So just because you see that it would only cost you $2 for your prescription, the second part is calling up the actual pharmacy that you're going to and confirm the amount. And I'm always notate, notate, notate.
Yeah.
When you call up and you talk to John,
Right.
mark down you talk to John at 1:35 p.m.
Yeah.
on Wednesday so when they come back and they say, "Oh, well, we don't know what you're talking about," you can
Right.
confirm.
John said, right.
Yes. So I
Right.
always have to confirm that, but most of the time that I've seen it with any one of these, normally you might have to ask for a manager or something like that every once in a while, but
Yeah.
normally they're able to honor the rates that show up on there because they have agreements with these companies, GoodRx and others, to be able to say, okay, yes, these are the costs if you use this discount card.
That's wonderful. Well,
I
that's,
guess the
yeah, we're
the
gonna
reco-
we're gonna
the
look
re
that up right now.
Yep. The recourse, I guess, is you go to GoodRx or Pennsylvania Prescription Assistance or whatever and say, hey, I tried to use it at the CVS and they said no, or to the Walgreens and they said no.
Yeah.
That would be your recourse. And then they can duke it out with them to say, why will you not honor what we have on here?
Yeah.
I've not gotten that far. Usually it's been pretty good. It's all been internal at that location. And I've gone to a couple different places, and I found out too that a lot of these smaller mom and pop apothecaries
Yeah.
have lower rates on certain prescriptions than the mainstream Walgreens, CVS, those
Oh,
type
because
ones.
you would think it would be the opposite.
Yes.
Huh. Okay. Good to
Um,
know.
so I was kind of I was unaware. Like a useful one for me with as many clients as I've seen is insulin, and I
Oh,
was amazed how much of a difference there can be in the price.
huh.
So again, I would take the prescription bottle that you have already or the prescription label paper that they gave you from the doctor, and I would go down and I would check multiple websites, these
Okay.
different ones that we mentioned, and then find which one is convenient. You don't want to have to, I don't want to have to drive to Harrisburg every time to get that prescription. Now, if it's insulin, something that's a regular basis, and you drive to Harrisburg and they'll give it to you for $10 versus 200, then it might be worth the drive.
Right.
Maybe not to Canada, like you had alluded to earlier, but that's it. Hey, I lived up in New Hampshire, and there was a regular occurrence when I lived in New Hampshire and Minnesota where people would drive over the border and
Well, there's you can. I mean, we both lived in New Hampshire, and there were buses that would go to Canada so that you could get your prescriptions, and they were full every time.
yep.
Yep.
So that's definitely a need that's there. I'm looking at some slides here that I have that, like I said, I had already sent out, but I think I've covered most of those main things that I wanted to make sure. Um, the other part that I found out was, and I ran into this myself, this was the last point on this sheet, was that I had a prescription that also had a generic. And I tried the generic and it did not work in the same way for me than the prescription mainstream name did. And then my insurance decided that they were like, yeah, no, we're not paying for it. We're only paying for the generic. So I said, okay, that's fine. If you don't want to pay for it, then I will just pay for it myself. And then I went and used the prescription cards and was able to get it that way. And then in the meantime, I've had the doctor take blood tests because I guess there's a test that they can confirm whether there's any therapeutic value to one prescription versus another.
Oh, okay.
So they took it before I went off of the generic, and then they took it again a couple months later when I was back on my normal one that I had been taking for years. Um, and beholding in those actual things, there was no therapeutic value to the generic, and there was for the regular name brand. So I was able to get my insurance then to go back and pay for it. And I've been like that for a while. They might change their mood, like the weather,
Right.
and might make me have to do that again in the future. But as of right now, I'm able to use that prescription at that point.
Huh.
And I got it paid for by the insurance company. So those are the things the hoops that you have to jump through. Nobody likes to be on hold. Nobody likes to make 300 phone calls. But I look at it going back to the frugal roots here of if I can save money, I'm going to do it every chance I can. And this might sound like a why would I do what's it why would I do it this way? I'll virtually raise your hand if your insurance has gone up over the last 10 years.
Right. And the answer is every single hand in the whole universe gets raised. Right.
If you can save your employer money by getting discounts on your prescriptions and they don't have to pay out as much, you're less of a risk on the insurance plan.
Hmm.
And then if you get everybody at your organization to do that, your whole organization has less risk. And then
Right.
guess what? Your insurance rates don't always go up. They might stay flat. And God forbid, they might go down. But yeah, I would say flat or not go up,
Right.
or they go up less.
Hmm.
So there's another section we'll deal with in another conversation that goes over the health plans and different things like that. But this one with the prescriptions, this one's a huge help, and it can indirectly help you save money down the road with your insurance costs. So that's where I wanted to just touch base with that. But I would recommend, and again, I sent you this stuff already,
Yep.
but it's pennsylvania.prescriptionassistance.info. That one there, I would highly recommend for people to get in on that. And of course, like I said, there's Single Care, there's Well RX, there's Good RX. I have all the websites in the documentation that I sent over, needymeds.org. But all of those things right there will help you save money and hopefully in the long run save time, because you usually have to jump through the hoops the first time.
Right.
And then probably once a year, there's some hoop jumping that you have to do as well.
Yeah.
The second part of this that I wanted to go over is sometimes when you get a maintenance drug, something that you need to take on a regular basis, that usually like you have to get through the mail because that like syringes and
Oh,
insulin
yeah. Yeah.
and like the commercials you see for things like Humira and other injections, those type of things, the Good RX card and stuff isn't going to work because they're specialty type of drugs.
Oh, okay.
But if you see the commercials, like I'll use the example of Humira, the commercials usually say at the end, if you have trouble paying for your prescriptions, we might be able to help. And they usually give you a website.
Right.
Well, that is actually true. You can go on there and you can actually talk with them either by phone or email or whatever. And what they'll do is you usually have some sort of application you need to fill out. You send it in and they give you a discount card just for them, just for
Oh,
this
okay.
for
Okay.
this manufacturer. And it can be substantial. It could be tens of thousands of dollars that they'll give you off on a drug for an entire year. Because
Because they
some of
want you to use it, because if you use it and it's successful for you, you're going to tell other people to use it, and the snowball
and
continues to roll
well,
down the hill. Yeah.
it's a little more self-serving too, because if you use it and it works, it's a drug usually you need to stay on for the rest of your life.
Right. Right. So they've,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So they're going to get their money. They're
Yeah.
just not going to get the higher amount.
Right.
But yeah, I've used this in the past and had a prescription that was between $2,000 and $5,000 a month that I now pay a $5 copay, and that's it.
Wow.
So yeah, and another one that I've done where I paid zero until I reached the limit for the year, which I've only done once, and that's disconcerting because then the bill can go up pretty high
Right.
very quickly. And I don't want to ever recommend, I've done it, but I don't ever recommend not taking your prescriptions when you're supposed to,
Yeah.
at the frequency that your doctor is recommending.
Right.
So yeah, some people go, oh, I can split this pill in half, or I can do this and that.
Yeah, you can't.
Unless they say you can, you don't want to do that.
Right.
I'm never going to recommend that type of stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I had to make the decision, and thousands of other people have had to. Do I not take the prescription and wait until this kicks back in, or do I not pay something else and I buy this? So yeah,
Right.
I know what that dilemma is, and I was able to work it out. The last part of this process is when you get into those, what they call the donut hole or whatever, where you're in this limbo area between, call your doctor's office. A lot of times they have samples of lots of different prescriptions available.
Yeah.
They're not going to give them to you for months on end.
Right.
But if you say, if I go and take this shot right now, I'm going to get charged $5,000
Right.
to get this shot. But if I wait 2 weeks and then order it, I'll have a $5 copay. Could you tide me over? The
Right.
answer is yes most of the time.
Yeah.
If the answer is no, a lot of times they'll recommend that you call the pharmaceutical company themselves, and they have helped in the past as well.
Yeah.
Saying, okay, we're going to do a one-time thing and just send you this 2-week supply of whatever.
Yeah, that happened to me once. I changed jobs and I had a 3-month prescription, and then I was just, you have to wait whatever amount of time before you get your new health plan kicks in. And I was like, it's 2 weeks. And my doctor made the phone call, said, give her 2 weeks to make it work, and she worked it out, and it was great. And you know what? Normally I wouldn't make the phone call. I would just pay it, and deal with it. But I was like, you know what? I'm a little desperate right now. And why we don't make those phone calls in other situations, I don't have any idea. Well, I think we all know it's because we've got shame, or we're embarrassed, or we think we're being, I don't know, too frugal or whatever, or this is the cost of life, or whatever it is. And you know what? Nope. And you've said this a million times. You never get the discount that you don't ask for. And every time I hear you say that, I think to myself, of course.
Yeah, if I call up the doctor's office and they say, no, we can't help you, then I have options, but that's one less option now.
Right. And nobody, right. And that's the worst thing they can do, is say no.
Right. And I've not experienced that. They said no, but.
Right.
And then there's another option. And yeah, you might have to make 22 phone calls, but is your time worth saving $100, $500?
Right. And
thousands of
that's what
dollars?
you have to weigh. If making 4 phone calls isn't worth 50 cents, well, it isn't. But if making 4 phone calls is $2,000, okay.
Yeah, I'll make the phone calls. Like my wife for years for different things, not just with medical stuff, but she's like, you on hold still? I'm like, yep. She's like, I couldn't do that. I would lose my mind. But I'll sit on hold for hours for certain things. If I know, like I would be working here at home. I'll just let it go, and someone will pick up eventually. Now I love it when you call towards the end of the day and 5 o'clock hits and like their office closes, they just hang up on you. Yeah, you don't just because you're in the queue doesn't mean they're going to answer your phone. But that's not always the case.
Right.
But yeah, I would say most of the people that I deal with, they're not collection people that are going to be angry when you call them. They're usually there to help.
Yeah.
So yeah, they want to find a way to help you. And you know what? If you get a bad conversation going with someone, hang up and call someone else.
Yeah.
Don't be rude about it. Just say, hey, you know what? I don't think we're meeting eye to eye. Can I talk to a supervisor? If they refuse to give you to a supervisor, you hang up, you call back in. And you can get frustrated with that person, but that person's not the problem. It's this whole process.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have to do what you have to do. And yes, a big part of it's saving money, but it's also peace of mind. When you have an underlying condition and you have that prescription and it makes you whole, makes you be able to function, that's priceless.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not let alone things like insulin that could, without taking it, you could die.
Right.
So yeah, you don't want to mess with that type of stuff. Your life is not worth putting it in jeopardy just for, you could have made a couple phone calls.
Right.
And if you can't do it yourself, it's usually someone in your circle that you'd be like, hey, you know what? Can you just help me? I've done it for neighbors. I've done that for clients at Tabor and stuff like
Yep.
that. Coworkers at
Yep.
Tabor and others. I'll be like, hey, just do this, this, and this. I'll even write them a little script. Make sure you ask this.
Yep.
Um, but there's nothing worse than getting through and then not asking all the questions you should have.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think that's about it on that. Like I said, later on, I don't know if we'll do it next week or
Yeah.
later on, but there is another part about the assistance programs that are offered by doctors and hospitals, and that's another huge part of this process.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, this is good. I think you've given us a lot of good information to be able to make simple changes and simple phone calls to be able to solve it. And remember always, if you're having a problem with it or you can't download or you thought you could find that and you couldn't find it, drop us a note and we will certainly, reach out and make it work for you. So Todd, as always, thank you very much. See you next week, everybody.
See you later.